How many times have you struggled when you're trying to create a nav bar and all of that styling just to make a nice responsive nav bar? It really does take some time. So with Bootstrap, they've made it easy. So the same thing, same idea as before, where we just simply add in the right classes, and this builds us that structure that the users would be expecting when they're looking for a nav bar. And Bootstrap, so they've got some options here within the navbar. So I'm just looking at Bootstrap 4, and with Bootstrap 4 there is a difference with the navbar where we do have the ability to do a whole different color scheme with the navbar. So we're no longer stuck with just the default black and then the inverse white and so on. We have the ability to do a navbar dark, we can inverse it. We also have the ability to update the style with using a color as well. So this is a really nice, neat feature with Bootstrap 4, is that we've got more options for our navbar. Before we were really limited to what we can do with a navbar. And we also have some options with the background faded and so on. So quite a bit with the navbar. So let's check this out and copy some of this code into our Bootstrap or our CodePen page and show you how the navbar works. So right away, whenever we add in a navbar, it really totally makes it look more like a website. So we see that we've got our navbar, we've got our links there and so on. And when we resize it, okay, so this becomes a problem. And with Bootstrap 4, now there's a different way to handle that responsiveness. So the idea is to build out your navigation bar and then add the responsiveness at a later point. Before with Bootstrap 3, it automatically resized, and that was one of the good features that's available within Bootstrap 3, so some slight changes. So let's look at the code in a little bit more detail. So typically if you want a form, you could add that in, and it just adds in line with the rest of the elements. So we've got a series of elements here. We've got an anchor here, looking out for the navbar. So this is typically done for going back to the home page. This you don't have to include if you don't want to. Again, this is depending on how you want to set this up. I'm going to get rid of some of this styling here. I'm going to get rid of the search field as well. So not all navbars are going to have that in place. So looking at the navbar, so by default, we can set a different navbar color. We could pull it to the left or pull it to the right. So let's check that out and see how this works. So the same way that we were initially creating a navigation bar and we had the ability to, or the same way that we were working with the rest of the content, the images where we could pull to the left or to the right, we can apply that same formatting to our nav bar. So if we want to pull it over to the right on an MD or middle size, we can do that as well. So we see that it gets pulled over to the right. The problem here is that we're not clearing the rest of the content, and what's happening is that our navbar gets pulled over to the right, but we don't have our paragraphs are still over to the left-hand side. So we have to do a clear fix if we want to do this. So I'm going to just remove that out, and that was just to demonstrate what we can do with our navbar. So also we can set a role here, and we can make sure that it's for accessibility. This is the reason that we add in roles. So navigation. So for accessibility point of view, that all of these different elements now have a specific role feature. So navigation bar would be specified under navigation. And let's say we did want to pull the navigation bar over to the right, but we don't want to affect the paragraph class. So then we could do that list items. And if we had additional content here within the nav bar, we could add in a div and pull it over to the right or pull it to the left and so on. So this gives us some more options of positioning as well and what we can do with our nav bar. So we also see that sometimes within the nav bar, you want to have some different options. So we've got options for navbar where we can do a navbar light option as well. So what this does is this fades out these ones, keeps the active one. So this is our active link. So that's why it comes out. We're able to see it more. We can also set how we want the background color to behave. So we can do background faded. And just like what we looked at when we were looking at the tables, that we have ability to set background. If we want to have a primary color for the background, so we want a blue background, we have that option as well. We could also inverse or set, instead of navbar light, we can do a navbar dark. So that's for darker colors. So what it does is essentially flips the color scheme of our fonts. So this is affecting the font, and then we've got ability to set a background color. We can also be more specific where we can specify a style. So if we had a particular background color in mind, and mind you, this again, this is only for Bootstrap 4. So previously, of course, we could set styling backgrounds, but we had to add in additional styling as well. So we could set a background color, or we could create a class with that background color, and then we could specify whatever color we wanted to. So if we want to do something like red or whatever, we could update it to be red. So I did have a little bit of an error there. So instead of primary, I can get rid of that, and we could keep background style red, and so on. So we could take any color that we want and set that background color. And then looking at the text styling, we could flip them as needed depending on what color our background color was. And one of the really neat things about Bootstrap is we can really easily position our navbar. So we can do something like navbar fixed bottom. And what this will do is this will place our navigation bar fixed at the bottom of our page. So if we had a lot of content here, and made it a little bit too big, but I was trying to get the scroll going, we could see it fixed at the bottom. We could also fix the position at the top, so to make sure that it's always sticking at the top there. And when we do this, we got to make sure that we move down our content accordingly so that we're not hovering over our top. So typically you'd have a nav bar and you'd have full width of the nav bar. So that's the default there. So that's just taking up the full available width of the navigation section. And we see that the next elements as well fall in line as well. So we saw that we've got quite a few options here for our navigation bar, and in the next lesson I'm going to show you how to make this responsive. So as I said, with Bootstrap 4 we need to make some more different adjustments to make it responsive, but these adjustments now, they make sense because they're working within the various breakpoints that we have available within our website. So this is where the new updates within Bootstrap 4 make it a lot more powerful, give you a lot more control on when you're showing the navigation menu and when the breaking points are. So that's coming up in the next lesson.